Historic Cold Spring Village is a private, non-profit living history museum that recreates aspects of life in South Jersey during the early American era. The village opened in 1981. All but one of the village's locally significant historic structures have been moved here from their original locations and restored to appear as they would have at the time of their construction. During the summer months, historically clothed interpreters recreate trades and tasks that would have been a common part of the everyday lives of our ancestors. Your tour begins here in front of our Welcome Center. It is a two-story white building with a red front door. Built in 1894, it originally stood in what is now the Lower Township Public Works Yard. In 1986, the building was donated to Historic Cold Spring Village and moved in one piece on the back of a truck to its current location. The first floor serves as the village's welcome center, with exhibits on local history, while the second floor is the village office. This small structure is the Reverend David Gandy house. It was built as a home along Tyler Road in Upper Township in 1830. Once a single-family home, it is now used as the village print shop, offering interpretations of the 19th century printing techniques typical of that time period. This building is the George Douglas Carriage House. It was built in the city of Cape May along Washington Street in the 1890s to house a horse, carriage, and their associated equipment. It is now the home of demonstrations of early American woodworking trades using a wide assortment of authentic 19th century woodworking tools. The tools in the village's woodworking shop actually represent a wide variety of woodworking trades, from barrel making to shipbuilding and shingle making. This structure is the village pottery shop. Built in 1988, it is not a historical structure. While the building may not have a long history, the pottery trade has a long history in New Jersey. New Jersey has large deposits of red clay, most commonly used to make bricks, along the Delaware Valley, while northeastern New Jersey holds large deposits of blue clay, used for making a type of pottery impervious to liquid called stoneware. Built in the 1860s, this is the Willis Barn. It originally stood along Mechanic Street in Cape May Courthouse. This is the Spicer Leeming House. Built in 1817 here in Lower Township for wealthy farmer and landowner Spicer Leeming, a descendant of two of the first European families to settle the Cape May Peninsula in the late 17th century. He farmed some of his land and rented some of it to tenant farmers. The ice cream parlor was originally a farm home that stood west along Townbank Road here in Lower Township. It was formerly named the Ewing Douglas House, after farmer David Ewing, who from 1838 to 1869 owned the farm on which this home stood, and farmer Nathaniel Douglas, who purchased the land from David Ewing in 1869. This building, built in the Dias Creek section of Middle Township in 1878, is the Ezrin Norton House, named after farmer Ezrin Norton, who also operated a small store from his home. It is used as a bakery during the summer season. This is the Lewis Corson Gandy barn from Dennis Township. What makes this barn particularly interesting is that it is an example of a 19th century prefabricated structure. It was built in 1880 from a kit manufactured by the Volney Bennett Lumber Company of Cherry Street in Camden, New Jersey. This small building was originally built on the north side of Dennisville and for many years was the place of business of shoemaker David Taylor. In the 1930s, The building was moved to a farm in Lower Township. This is the village blacksmith shop. It originally stood in the Goshen section of Middle Township and was actively used as a blacksmith shop from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century. Owned by blacksmith John Finley and his business partner Paige Douglas, they manufactured iron goods for the people of the area, as well as supplying ironware to the shipyards active in the Goshen, South Dennis, and Dennisville region in the late 19th century. This is the Taylor Poultry House, built as a chicken coop on a farm in Lower Township on Seashore Road. What makes it unusual is its shape. It has 8 walls. Octagonal buildings were a popular architectural fad in early and mid-19th century America. It is currently used as a retail space. This small retail structure, formerly known in the village as the Mackay Williams Shop, originally stood in the Tuckahoe section of Upper Township. It was built in 1855 for Taylor Mackay Williams and stood near what is now the intersection of New Jersey routes 49 and 50. The bay windows are original and once displayed Mackay Williams wares. It was donated to historic Cold Spring Village in 1991. This is the 1804 Stillwell and Elizabeth Corson barn, a 3-bay English-style barn from Upper Township. The barn was built in 1804 and was originally located in the Palermo section of Upper Township. In 2015, the barn was disassembled and brought to the village to serve as the home of the Cold Spring Brewery, historic Cold Spring Village's very own microbrewery and the only non-profit microbrewery in New Jersey. All profits from the brewery are used to fund the village's historic preservation, interpretive, and educational activities. Built in 1876 as a retail shop by a man named Goen Erickson, this structure is the only building in the village not originally from Cape May County. In 1974, it was the first building to be brought to the village from another location, having been moved from the Heislerville section of Morris River Township in Cumberland County. The large 2-story white building you see is the only structure in the village located on its original site. It is also the youngest structure in historic Cold Spring Village, having been built in 1912 to serve as the meeting place of Cold Spring Grange No. 132, the Lower Township chapter of a national agricultural organization known as the Patrons of Husbandry. This building is the James Haythorne House from Upper Township. It was built in 2 segments. The front half was constructed in 1722, which makes it one of the oldest surviving structures in Cape May County. The back half, which includes the original hearth cooking fireplace, was added in 1780. While the exact date of this small structure is not known, it was likely built in the late 19th century. It originally stood in Cape May Point near modern Sunset Beach. It was used by the trolley line that ran from the no longer existing steamboat dock at Sunset Beach. It was later used as a holding cell by the Cape May Police Department and then as a storage shed for the Cape May Point Volunteer Fire Company before being donated to historic Cold Spring Village in 1982. This is the Dennisville Inn, built in 1836 in the Dennisville section of Dennis Township. The Dennisville Inn held a tavern, a dining room, and lodging for travelers. The building was donated to historic Cold Spring Village in 1976 and was moved here in 2 pieces. The top floor was removed from the first floor, and the 2 halves were brought to the village on trucks then reassembled and restored to its original 1836 appearance. This is the Corson Hand House, built in 1837 in Upper Township by ship carpenter Aaron Corson. During the summer months, the Corson Hand House is home to demonstrations of fiber arts activities such as spinning and weaving. This small structure might not look like much, but it holds an important place in the history of Cape May County. Built in 1691, this is the Cox Hall Cottage, the only remaining section of a much larger structure named Cox Hall. It is the oldest surviving structure in Cape May County and was built for Dr. Daniel Cox. This is the section that has survived as the main part of Cox Hall, eventually was abandoned, neglected, and was in ruins by the 19th century. The Cox Hall Cottage is now used for discussions of the early history of Cape May County. Built in 1850 in the Marshallville section of Upper Township, this is the Marshallville School, a one-room school that was in use from 1850 to 1921. Marshallville was founded in 1814 by businessman Randall Marshall as a glass-making community centered around the Cumberland Works. Schools of this type were common in rural areas in early and mid-19th century New Jersey. The primary subjects taught were reading, writing, and ciphering, as mathematics was called at the time. Thank you for visiting historic Cold Spring Village. We appreciate your visit and for keeping the past alive for future generations.